Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kachia Kuma, and we'll be doing another reaction today. Now, this particular clip that I'm going to show you is by Dr. Damina. I just heard a few uh, lines from him, and I knew I was going to react to it. So there's so many things I've not yet heard, and we'll see it. Now, as you know me, I always want to take the objective view on this. So I'm going to tell you where I agree with and where I don't agree with, and hopefully share some insight on that. All right, so let's get into it.
Of God. Say it again. The what? Wait, repeat it again. The what? Wait, repeat it again. The what? How can there be wrath in God? Wrath is the work of the flesh. Anger is a work of the flesh. How can God be angry?
All right. So this is where there's a problem. You see, he assumes that what is meant by the wrath of God here is anger. That's why we talk about contextual interpretation of scriptures. This is deceptive and highly so. Now we're going to see why I'm saying this. Now look at John 3:36. Now this is Jesus talking about the wrath of God. It says, "He that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life, and he that believeth not the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abideth on him." Now, if you look at this context, it does not suggest anger. Are you understanding? It's suggesting condemnation. In fact, if you look at it and from the context, John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. But he that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he had not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God." Now this is the condemnation, that light is come to the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. So you see that the context here is about judgment and not anger. So in verse 36, it says, "He that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life." That means that's repeating what he said earlier. "And he that believeth not the Son shall not see life." So the everlasting life is salvation, and he that don't believe is not saved. What is the reward for not believing? Condemnation. You're condemned to the lake of fire. So he is talking about the lake of fire. So the wrath of God is referring to the lake of fire. Don't believe me? Romans 1 verse 18. "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who hold the truth in unrighteousness." Was he referring to as the wrath of God here? Condemnation. Because we see it in verse 17. "For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith." Do you understand? This is quite simple. So it's condemnation. So those that refuse to believe are condemned to the lake of fire. That one is clear. Jesus also said something about this in Matthew 25:41. "Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels." So the wrath of God was not God's anger directed at men. You cannot change the scriptures. The wrath of God was the condemnation that man inherited from Satan. Now, Matthew 25:41 clearly says that this lake of fire was prepared for Satan and his angels. It was not prepared for man. But when man sinned and aligned himself with Satan, he became an inheritor of the lake of fire. Now, this man of God is going to go on a whole tirade. This is what we call strawman's fallacy. You're right. Create an argument that does not exist and then make a case out of that argument so it will look like as if he has debunked it. Meanwhile, he's just misdirecting you from the real truth. Now, look at this.
Because there's anger in God, it tampers with the sovereignty of his character. Because anger is a work of the flesh. And you see, that's why the character of God has been messed up over the years. And it makes it difficult for you to relate with God when you think that.
So you see it now. He said because anger is a work of the flesh. So he taking you from the right definition of the wrath of God, and he's gone to anger, which he can easily prove to be a work of the flesh. He's going to do that, I believe, because that's what any sensible person will do, making a case. You almost think this guy is a lawyer. He knows what he's doing. So now he was going to prove that anger is a work of the flesh. All right, but that's not what the context is talking about in the first place.
God has tendencies for anger. God has never been angry. God is not angry. God can never be angry. There's no anger in the light. Look at God's character. Can I show you God's character? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, gentleness, meekness, temperance, faith, long-suffering, goodness, faithfulness. That is a description of the exact, accurate character of God. There's no wrath in God's character. Let's go through it. Galatians 5:19. Are you still in the building? Galatians 5:19. 19, brother, before 22. Now the works of the flesh. Now what? The works of the flesh are manifest. Which are these? Adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath. Wrath is a work of the flesh. How can there be wrath in God?
Like textbook format. That's exactly what he did. I said that's what he was going to do, and that's what he did. Now he's proving wrath is not the character of God. So therefore, John 3:36 is lying. Paul too was lying, because Paul talked about the wrath of God in so many scriptures. Or let's just say 15, because some of them were talking about wrath generally. So was Paul lying? Except that Paul was referring to something else. And that context is important. Now it's not just Paul. Jesus also mentioned in Matthew 25:41. And he was talking about condemnation. Or is he going to deny that God did not condemn certain people who refused the salvation that he has given to us? Or are we heading towards universalism? See that now? We need to properly interpret scriptures. Let's go ahead. Let's see further.
That mutilates God's character. And I am on a mission to defend and present the single identity of God. That God does not have dual identity. He has only one identity, and he has no hidden agendas. When you see God, that's all that there is to him. There is no hidden agenda. When you know God like that, you will have an intimate relationship, because you can trust him, you can rely on him, and you are sure that he has your back. Even when you make mistake, you know that he doesn't get angry. Rather, he looks for how to get you out of the mistake. Now, when you understand God's character,
Now, that part is true. That's the exact nature of God. He does not look towards bringing you into ruin in a bid to punish you. Right? Now, it's important to identify this thing and state it categorically. That God is not just the justifier of the ungodly. He is the just God. It means that he is the judge. Jesus described him many times as a judge and the judge of the world. It is God's job to judge the world. You understand? God is love by nature, but God is judge as a job, as duty. It is his duty to judge the world. If God stops judging the world, there will be no world. For the sake of the sustenance of the universe, God has to be the judge of the world. So, by his duty, through his laws, the infringement of his laws will lead to condemnation. But by his nature, which is love, he found a way that man will be saved and be redeemed from his own punishment. Thus, Jesus came and died and rose again for our salvation. So you see it. Even though he should have been angry with us, he was not. And instead found a way to redeem us. But those who refuse his way will still be condemned. The wrath of God will still be in them. Jesus said that the wrath of God will abide in them. There is no way you can explain away John 3:36. So let's see. Let's see what new thing he has to come up with.
Your relationship with God is affected positively. Am I communicating at all? God can't have wrath. There's no wrath in God. Wrath is a work of the flesh. And they who have these works cannot enter the kingdom of God. How can the kingdom which God owns accommodate wrath and stop people with wrath from being a part of it? That is not just. Sir, that is why you will hear the atheists will say, if you really say God is love, why do little children die mercilessly? How can a good God allow evil things happen to good people? That is the question in the mind of people who don't want God. They feel, how can there be a God anywhere? And children die at birth. And women struggle. A boy said to me, I saw my mother dying. I cried and I said, God, if you really are there, please let my mother stay. I don't have a father. I don't have anybody. Oh God, I beg you. And my mother still died. How can I believe in that kind of God? That is the question in the mind of people that don't like your church.
Well, this example is brought up has nothing to do with the wrath of God. It has to do with people's doubt on God's capacity or desire to help them, not as punishment. So this is not the same example that is relevant in the context I was talking about. But I get it because it still pokes hole on the character of God. And usually it's a very, very legit concern. And one we always explain well. And I always say this has nothing to do with God's desire to heal anybody or to deliver anyone from affliction. It's about the exercise of faith to do so. Because without faith, it's impossible to do anything really with God's power on earth. Right, so we'll talk about that at another time, but this is a legitimate thing.
That is the question in the mind of people that don't come to church, because we preachers have preached a God of judgment and a God of love. How can they trust a God who has the tendency for evil and the tendency for good? What kind of a double-minded God? Why is God so mentally agitated?
Now, where did double-mindedness come into this? Did we pray that God refused to heal the person because he's a God of wrath? No. That had nothing to do with anything. See, now once you start getting error from the beginning, every of the equation is just wrong. So my brother is going on on a whole rave of error because he missed it from the very beginning. Now every other postulations that comes from here is going to be wrong, and he is not seeing this. Have you ever had that thing where you're writing an exam and then you miss the formula for the equation you're going to use? Every other thing you do is going to be wrong. That's just what is going on now.
Why can't he maintain a consistency? We don't want that kind of God. The world is asking questions. They are in dire need of answers. You want me to serve your God? You want me to serve your God? A God that destroys men. How can I serve you? It's even better to stay with Satan. You hear people say such things. And it's because
so he's getting to the God cannot kill doctrine. And again, you have to invent your own God. That's just the thing. It's either you accept God for who he is or you invent your own God. This is the same thing people do. Take up a stone, carve it, put makeup on it and decorations, and then start bowing down to it and say, "Oh, behold my God, the one that created me." So go ahead and create your own God. But it's not the God of the Bible. That's not the God of the Bible. Scriptures is clear. God had orchestrated the destruction of men who disobeyed and refused to obey. We saw that with Sodom and Gomorrah. We saw that with the flood. And we can talk about so many examples. It's clear in scriptures.
because we've not been able to defend the character, the single character of God. And it's easy. It's because the Bible you read, you didn't understand it. You saw he kill it and make it alive. And you thought it was God. But you didn't study well to see that that was the impression of the author. You read it, give it and take it away. You thought that that's the dual nature of God. But you didn't read well to see that that was the impression of a fallen man by the name Job. You read and you saw that the Bible said, can evil happen and God has not caused it? You didn't read clearly to see that that was the impression of Amos the prophet. These were their impressions. Why? No man has seen God at any time. So since they have not seen God, in their writings, they added their impressions. In the Old Testament, if something happens that cannot be explained, they concluded it must be God. That's where our legal system got it from, where they say natural disasters are an act of God.
This I agree with. So many things that were confused in the Old Testament were misconstrued to be God's actions, and they were not. This is true. So we explain these things well, but we don't invent a new interpretation.
The legal system of Nigeria believes, in fact globally, that natural disasters are an act of God. They got it from the Old Testament impression of the prophets. If natural disasters are an act of God, why would Jesus rebuke the wind and the waves? Why didn't he say more wind, more waves? Because this is an act of God. Jesus is God who came to introduce God's character. He looked at the wind and said, "Shut, peace, be still." And there was a calm because
all right, so this is quite easy to explain. He's correct here too. Natural disasters have been misconstrued to be acts of God. They are never acts of God. Why? Because when God created the heaven and the earth, Bible said he saw that everything was good. All right, so that good there could not involve destruction of properties, destruction of lives. That's not God's plan. Natural disasters are not actually natural. You understand? So there are a contortion of nature when man fell. Now the whole world was made subject to corruption. We see that in scriptures. Romans 8. Let me see if I can locate that. Romans 8, I think 19 or 20. For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, or in other words, corruption, not willingly, but by reason of him who has subjected the same in hope. So, yes, uh, so when man fell, nature was corrupted. Certain things that shouldn't be began to, form, and that's what we are seeing. So natural disasters are not natural; they are a contortion of nature. Some of it are even man-made, like earthquakes are caused by fault holes in the earth crust or something like that.
God does not function through natural disasters. All God does is to stop them to the degree to which you allow him to stop them. He has no pleasure in death. He is life. I am come that you may have life. That's God's character. Jesus, I love Jesus. You know, Jesus is God in human flesh who came to help man understand God. That's why he came in humanity, because his target is man. So he came in man's form. So in man's form, he can explain God to man. So man can understand God, so that man and God can be a family. Jesus showed up. Why people are thinking about God being the one behind evil and disaster and cancers and ulcers and high blood pressure, and thinking it is God teaching them a lesson or punishing them, Jesus showed up and walked among them and said, the thief cometh not, but for to steal, to kill, and to destroy. Meaning, I am not the killer, I'm not the stealer, I'm not the destroyer.
All right, so it's quite interesting to see him quote Jesus and his views on God as the final authority of God. And he ignores the same Jesus in John 3:36. When he said the wrath of God does not abide in that person. So you choose what you want, you just cherry pick and then leave the rest. That's not Bible study. That's not Bible study.
I am light, and my job is to expose darkness. So let me expose who is behind death, who is behind stealing, who is behind destruction. Let me expose him. He is called the thief which is the devil. But this is what I do when I come. You have life and have it more abundantly. Am I teaching good this morning? I'll come that you may have life.
Okay, so that's the end of it. Well, what I would say is this, and to his followers and to the body of Christ at large, you've just got to be wise. Mind what you listen, the kind of food, the diet you take in. A lot of these guys are inventing their own Jesus. You're quoting Jesus as the final description of God. Yeah, John 1:18 says he is the explanation of God. So he told us all. He showed us the love of God. He showed God as judge. He showed God as the judge of the world. But you decide to take off the judge part and stick to the love part. You can just create your own God. So that's all I'll say about this. If there are any questions you have, you can just go ahead, comment them, let me know what you think. And then don't forget to subscribe if you're watching from YouTube, and then follow us on Facebook or wherever you're seeing this video. God bless you.